I want to take a few minutes to share with you something that is very near and dear to my heart. Over the last 10 years, I've had the privilege of working with Building God's Way and really helping lead churches through talking about sustainable solutions. What does it mean to take our building when it's not being used Monday through Friday and use it as an enterprise that can give back to the community but also generate income for the church as we move forward? And today I want to talk to you about True North Kids. I think we've got one more slideshow there, fellas, if you can throw that out for me. True North Kids is really an idea that we've come up with over the years. We've done a lot of different things. Coffee shops, we've done hundreds of coffee shops with churches, shared workspace. Don mentioned event centers that we've run inside of our campuses. And what we've realized in all of these ideas is that there's an overlap between business and ministry that work really well inside of a building. But what do we do when business and ministry interact with one another? What do we do when there's a conflict and we have to make that decision? And in childcare, what we found is that the overlap is almost 100%. That churches and childcare centers that have a heart to disciple the next generation of kids in a relationship with Jesus Christ share the same mission, share the same values, share the same heart in community transformation. And man, we think that every church should consider early childhood education because we live in a world right now where there are two North Poles. Did you know that's true in our world right now? That there's a magnetic North Pole. If you were to follow a compass and just head north, by the time you got to what you thought was the North Pole, you'd be about 360 miles off course because magnetic north doesn't account for the fact that the earth is round and follow the sphere of the earth. True north is what leads us directly to the North Pole. And we live in a world today where there is an undeniable magnetic pull culturally on the hearts of our children. We live in a world that's constantly trying to tell our children where they find their identity, where they find their purpose, where they find their hope, where they find love. And we believe that if we can reorient a young generation of people to look to Jesus Christ as their true north, we can see real change in our country, real change in our world. Tom mentioned earlier, 70% of active participants in the church in the United States of America today made the decision to follow Jesus before they were 12 years old. That means that we have this ripe period of time in a child's life to preach the gospel. Jesus told us this, that if you want to see the kingdom of God, look to little children. But one of the daunting problems with this statistic is this, that over 80% of kids in the church today, or in the world today, in the United States today, are not in church at all. That of young families, parents are saying that they're either completely disinterested in things of faith or church, or simply are just too busy and don't have time. And so as a church, what we find is that in this ripe age of children, we just do not have access to so many of the kids that live inside of our community. All the while, we have parents that are desperate for a childcare solution Monday through Friday. In most communities, even the community you live in here, right here in Central Florida, we find a childcare desert where parents of infants to 5-year-olds are waiting in line to get their kids into a safe school that's going to educate them. And what would happen if churches could open up their doors and say, you know what, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., we are going to orient our building that's sitting here anyway, that we're having to heat and cool anyway, that the space exists for our programs that happen most of the time at nights and over the weekends. What would happen if we opened that up as a respite to families in our community to come in and find a place of hope, find a place that's going to care for their children, and establish a place that's going to disciple the hearts and the minds of young children in our community while filling a void for families that they can then ask the question, who are these people inside of this church and why do they care about our family so much? I was just at a school that we started a couple weeks ago. And the director was telling me she got a call from a Muslim family that's been in their school for the last 2 years. This family's been pretty disinterested in things of faith, but is very appreciative that they found a safe place that's educating their children. But this Muslim mom showed up and asked for a meeting with the director. And when they sat down together, she asked of the director, she said, "Can you teach me how to pray to Jesus?" The director was all fired up, man. Like, I'm going to teach you, and this is the moment. And after she got done teaching her how to pray to Jesus, she said, "Can I just ask you why? What made you ask this question? Set up this meeting today." She said, "You see, my 4-year-old daughter won't eat dinner until we pray to Jesus. And I'm afraid she's going to starve to death." So I'm just going to say, see, we're sending home missionaries into families that we might not be able to preach sermons to as a church. And I say this all the time. You want to be the hands and feet of Jesus to a single mom dropping off a baby at your facility at 6 o'clock in the morning? Give her a cup of coffee and tell her you're praying for her. These are incredible ministry opportunities inside of churches, but also they're profitable business models. We're able to step inside of churches and help take a space that's a liability inside of your building and turn it into an asset. Turn it into a profit center. And how many of you know, like so many people in our churches as pastors say, we should be doing more ministry. We should be doing more outreach. We should be doing more in our community. And as pastors, we know that ministry costs money, doesn't it? It costs resources. And here's a ministry that reaches a critical audience inside of our community. And instead of having to pay for it, it generates income that supports the rest of our ministry. This is a critical piece as you talk to Tom and talk about funding, as you talk to Chris and talk about fundraising, as you talk to Don and to the collage team to come in and design. When you can begin to dream about a facility that's not just being used for 10 or 15 hours a week, but now all of a sudden 80 or 90 hours a week, we open up the possibility for what we can accomplish together. And at True North, we understand the pivotal role that early childhood education plays in fulfilling the Great Commission in our community. I ask people this question all the time. We really have two choices. We can either allow the government to raise this next generation of children, or the church can step back in and take that initiative. Which one would you choose? How do we reestablish ourselves as a force inside of this industry? Because what we found is over the 80s and early 90s, churches largely bailed on this as a business model. And there's a lot of reasons why churches failed at this as a business model. Mother's Day out programs, 3 days a week programs, just afternoon or morning programs. I'll be honest with you, they just don't work. But what does work as a business model is licensed schools that are working in conjunction with your state government that are preaching the gospel of Jesus in an early childhood education setting. And so we believe, and we are committed to empowering the church. And here's the thing I'll tell you as a pastor. I'm passionate about this, but don't put me in a classroom full of 2-year-olds. Like, you want to see a security threat that we were just talking about? Put me in a room with babies. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody's going to get hurt. I don't know a whole lot about running the business, but what I know is that there are professionals out there that can walk alongside of churches doing the heavy lifting operationally to continue to free you up as a pastor to continue to pastor, to continue to lead your church. Our goal is to surround you with a team of consultants and expertise where you can continue to lead this as a pastor, and you don't have to start thinking like a businesswoman. You don't have to start thinking like a businessman, but you can trust that you have a team of advisors around you who are doing that on your behalf and helping you reach young families at an incredible pace. So how do we do that? We have a 5-step process at True North Kids. The first one is through consulting and planning, and we'd love to start that conversation with you today. We want to do a first look at the demographics of your community, understand what's going on. How many kids live within just a few miles of you and your building? What is the income? What is the cooperation that we have to have with the state and with the local schools? There's so many things that go on to making an effective center, and we want to make sure we turn on all the lights for you so that you can make a decision moving forward. And then we begin planning, laying out a feasibility study and helping you establish a business plan. The reason why this business plan is so important, we're going to do a 5-year pro forma for you so that when you sit down and talk to lenders, when you start talking about fundraising, you understand what the liability, what the return on investment, and what the likely income is going to be from this school so that you can start planning for that in the future. We move from that to facility design. And Don talked about this a little bit, but it is so important that you design your facility for childcare. The difference of 10 square feet in a classroom for 2-year-olds could be the difference between a profitable school and a school that's losing money. Because every classroom comes with a ratio from the state that's going to tell us how many teachers, how many students, and how many square feet do we need per room. So we need to make sure those rooms are built appropriately. And we say this to churches all the time, and Don would agree with this. Even if you're not planning on opening a childcare center today, make sure you design your childcare space with this in mind so that it's an option for you down the road if you ever choose to do it. It's so much easier to design it right the first time than having to go in and try to retrofit. But we also do retrofit. We work with a lot of churches that would say, hey, we have this space and we want to utilize it well. And I'll tell you this, 2 things to kind of think about in a retrofit building. A child care center is automatically going to trigger safety, and the big safety is fire sprinklers. And so we want to make sure that you have fire sprinklers in place. And then also plumbing is a big thing. Typically in Sunday school classrooms, we don't have toilets and sinks available to each classroom. We need to have that for a child care center. So there is a cost, but there's also an ROI or a return on investment to that cost. And we want to look at your facility and really help you design that appropriately so that you can count the cost of what we need to do to engage in this type of a ministry. The third thing that we do is licensure. And this is a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of hours, and I know we've got a lot of childcare partners that are in this room, a lot of hours and expertise that go into the licensure process with your state. We do all of that on your behalf. And the reason why this is so important is because we want to make sure that we're not running child care centers that are just middle of the road. We want to be the best of the best inside of this space. So we're going to check every box that you possibly need to check in order to get your license in place so that you can be a top-rated child care inside of your community. The fourth thing that we do is we help staff your executive team. This is critical because these schools run as well as we're able to staff them. In HR, in the world we live in today, not only when you're looking for qualified educators, but also educators that share the same faith, the same values, the same passion as your church, all of a sudden, man, we are literally sometimes looking for a needle in a haystack. We want to help you navigate that. And let me tell you this, the 2 most important positions you can hire inside of a school, number 1 are your director. That's going to be your chief of operations. That's going to be the individual that makes this an incredible experience for you and your church or a tough experience for you and your church. So we want to make sure we hire right your director. And the second position that we always bring to the table is a school pastor. We want to bring somebody on your staff that works directly with you and for you who is paying attention to pastoring every family, every child that comes into your school throughout the week. And what we find is that every child comes attached to about an average of 7 adults per child. Uncles, aunts, grandparents, family, friends. And so every time we have a Christmas program, we know that's an outreach opportunity to reach people as a church that we may never have the opportunity to reach in any other way. How are we paying attention to those moments? We want to make sure we have someone on your staff that's listening when a grandparent dies and is going to the hospital in the name of your church to sit and to pray with that family. We want someone who knows when a new sibling is born so they can go and bring flowers and balloons to the hospital and celebrate, again, to elicit the question inside of your church of people asking this question. Who are those people and why do they care so much? The fifth thing that we bring to the table is ongoing administrative support. Somebody who's looking at budgeting, looking at the ongoing training of your staff, making sure that all of your certifications are up to par, making sure that we're really honing in this business model to be the most effective financial tool and ministry tool for your church. And this is shared space. It's not dedicated space. So we're going to continue to look at how we're turning over rooms on a Wednesday night for your midweek service. We're going to continue to talk to your kids' church and your Sunday school teachers on a Sunday morning to make sure we're creating an atmosphere where people aren't grumbling and complaining about each other, saying that school, but instead saying, man, look at what our school is doing. So we do that, and this is kind of what sets us apart in this industry. There's a lot of partners out there, and we work with a lot of great partners. Phase is here, and they do an incredible job partnering with churches. Lionheart, Learning Care Group, and we love those models that come in and really are a financial partner with the church. What we do is a little bit different because we know that financial partnership, when you're splitting every dollar between two partners, only works in large settings where you need 12, 13, 14 classrooms, 150 to 200 kids. And what we've realized at BGW is there's so many churches that could do this effectively, but maybe not to that top scale. Maybe not to a school that encompasses 12,000 square feet. And so how do we do this on a smaller scale? And we do that as a fee-based consultant service, which means that we're coming in not as a business partner and sharing in revenue with you, but as a startup catalyst. That's our goal, is to get you up and running, to get all of the heavy lifting of startup over the first 12 to 18 months done on your behalf, which means that your ministry owns the school, and this is very important, that you own the school, you hold the license, and you keep 100% of the profit in-house. A lot of times, with larger partners, if we're looking at a business model that is only generating $100,000 or $150,000 a year, there's a lot of partners that would say there's just not enough meat on the bones for us to be able to engage in that. But how many of you pastors in the room right now could say, I could figure out a way to spend another $150,000 in our budget? Like, that's a game changer for us. And so we want to help you be able to do that. The second thing that I'll tell you, it's very important that the church owns the school. That means you have ultimate control about who's in your classroom, what's going on in your classroom. You don't have to exercise that authority every day. It's best that you don't have to. But when push comes to shove, to have ownership of the school and to be able to hold that license is so important. Our contracts run for 12 months. And so our goal is to come in for the first 12 months, get you fully established as a school, and then be able to see your school stand on its own 2 feet, because now that's less money you're having to pay for a group to come in and show you how to do it, and more money that you have for ministry. And man, as I hope you guys can tell, this is a model that we absolutely believe in. We believe in it as a ministry model first and foremost, but have also seen itself prove out time and time again as an effective financial model for churches. And this QR code, just go ahead and snap a picture of that on your phone. You've also got some brochures in front of you. You can go to truenorthkids.org and check us out there. But what we'd love to do is set up a phone call with you, do a first look on your behalf where we look at your building, we look at your community, and just show you some insight insights that we find in your community and lay out for you strategic next steps and how you can move forward in this type of ministry in your community. And man, we would love to answer any questions. This QR code will bring you straight to a scheduling page so you can schedule a first look phone call with us there. It's going to ask just some real general questions from you. And by the time we jump on a phone call with you next week, we're going to have a full-blown first look report and feasibility study ready for you to look at and to discuss together.